West should not dictate peace terms to Ukraine, says Czech Foreign Minister. Jan Lipavsk says Western backers should recognize Ukraine is fighting against Russia to protect all Europe.
Here's a summary of the article.
Western backers of Ukraine should not dictate peace terms to Kyiv and recognize that the country is in effect fighting against Russia to protect all of Europe, the Czech foreign minister has said on a trip to London. Jan Lipavsky, whose country holds the EU presidency, also blamed Russia for what appears to be a stray air defense missile landing in Poland on Tuesday, because it had attacked Ukraine with more than 100 rockets. We shouldn't be in a position where we dictate to Ukraine with other conditions for peace, if they are fighting for their own survival, Lipavsky said, when asked if it was reasonable for Ukraine to demand a restoration of the pre-2014 borders. Lipavsky said countries across the continent were benefiting from providing Ukraine with ongoing military, financial and humanitarian aid. Freedom is not for free, the minister said, adding that his country had suffered heavily in the 50 years before the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. The foreign minister said it was quite easy to answer who's to blame for the deaths of 2 Poles on Tuesday after a stray missile, believed to be from a Ukrainian S-300 air defense system, landed on a farm about 4 miles from the border. The foreign minister was in the UK to collect a Magnitsky Human Rights Award for his part in the Czech Republic passing a law last month allowing the country to sanction Russia or other foreign entities violating human rights, supporting terrorism, or committing cyber crimes.
This post received a score of 10,000, with an upvote ratio of 94%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
TBF. Historically speaking, Czechoslovakia were in the same situation during the advent of World War II when Allies, UK and France, dictated the peace terms about the issue of Sudetenland with Germany without Czechoslovakia's intervention or consultation on the peace terms. So them stating this didn't came out of the blue, it's just something to remind the West, Allied nations.
Didn't Neville Chamberlain sign away Czechoslovakia when he signed the treaty with Hitler?
Not all of it, at least initially. Only the border regions, Sudetenland, for the promise of peace under the Treaty of Munich. Czechoslovakia was not defenseless, it had a considerable war industry and its small territory was protected by strong fortifications, located in aforementioned Sudetenland. With that region now under German control, Czechoslovakia was left in a very vulnerable position. A year later the Germans just straight up violated the treaty and occupied and dismantled the country.
Technically, Ukraine is fighting to protect themselves. The other countries are either protected by the EU or NATO.
They are, but by doing so they are protecting us. I dread to think what position we would be in now if Putin's initial plan had worked, because Ukraine never received help.
Genuine question. When they're struggling to fight just against Ukraine, albeit a heavily NATO-funded Ukraine, what makes you think Russia would be in any position to actually take on an EU or NATO country? I honestly think the idea that Russia is in any position to conquer any part of the EU, NATO is a myth. I'm open to hearing why it's not, but we've already seen how poorly the war is going just in Ukraine. Taking on a bunch of other countries directly does not seem possible.
I don't think the concern would be that Russia was then poised to take on EU, NATO. It'd be bad enough that they'd potentially be poised to consolidate their gains in Ukraine and eventually annex the nation. Wars for territorial conquest have been the norm for most of human history, but sorta felt like we were trending away from that being a thing. Would fucking suck if it became the norm again. Despite the divergence in General Milley and the State Department's official stances regarding negotiations, I'm glad the EU is backing the State Department's policy. Russia has been placated for 2 decades. Yes, perhaps now is the time for negotiations from a diplomatic standpoint. But, the time is also now to send a message to the world that we will not tolerate the erosion of good faith in diplomacy. This is Ukraine's fight. They can choose.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.